EMT Dalton grew up the youngest of three siblings. His family owned a small hardware store, which had been in the Dalton family for generations. EMT was always known as the gentle soul of the family, with a kind word for everyone and a willingness to help anyone in need. He had a close relationship with his parents, who cherished his thoughtful and considerate nature. In school, EMT was not the most popular kid, but he was well liked for his easygoing attitude and warm smile. He had a small circle of friends who appreciated his loyalty and sense of humor. After graduating high school, EMT decided to stay in their home to help his parents run the hardware store. He enjoyed the simple life and found contentment in the routine of small-town living. EMT's relationship with his family was solid. His older siblings had moved to nearby cities, but frequently visited, maintaining a strong bond with their youngest brother. EMT was particularly close to his sister Rachel, who often confided in him and sought his advice. His parents, though traditional in their ways, were supportive of EMT and proud of the man he had become. EMT had a few relationships, none of which were particularly serious. He was looking for someone who shared his values and appreciated the quiet life he enjoyed. Layla Renshaw was a strikingly beautiful woman, with an air of mystery that captivated those around her. She grew up in the bustling city of Larkspur, a stark contrast to the quiet town. Layla's upbringing was far from idyllic. Her parents had a hard relationship marked by frequent arguments and bouts of separation. As an only child, Layla often found herself caught in the middle of their conflicts, learning early on how to manipulate situations to her advantage. In her teenage years, Layla developed a reputation for being headstrong and manipulative. She had a string of relationships, each ending in turmoil due to her controlling nature. Layla thrived on power and control, often pushing her partners to the brink with her demanding and possessive behavior. Despite this, her charm and allure made it difficult for people to see her true nature until it was too late. After finishing high school, Layla moved to town in search of a fresh start. She quickly found a job at a local boutique, where her charisma and sales skills made her a favorite among customers. It was here that she met EMT Dalton, a regular customer who was immediately taken by her beauty and confidence. To Layla, EMT seemed like the perfect target, a kind, gentle man who was easy to control. Layla's past relationships had always followed a similar pattern. She would charm her way into her partner's life, gradually isolating them from their friends and family. Once she had established control, her true colors would show, leading to intense arguments and emotional manipulation. Her partners often felt trapped, unable to leave due to Layla's relentless grip on their lives. When Layla met EMT, she saw him as another challenge, someone she could mold and control. She was drawn to his kindness and vulnerability, seeing them as weaknesses she could exploit. EMT's trusting nature made it easy for Layla to weave her way into his life, slowly isolating him from those who cared about him. To the outside world, Layla and EMT appeared to be a happy couple, but behind closed doors, a much darker story was unfolding. EMT first met Layla on a warm summer afternoon at the local boutique. He was shopping for a birthday gift for his mother when Layla, with her striking looks and confident demeanor, offered to help him. Their interaction was brief, but left a lasting impression on EMT. He couldn't stop thinking about her radiant smile and the way she seemed genuinely interested in helping him. A few days later, EMT returned to the boutique, this time with the intention of asking Layla out. To his delight, she accepted, and they arranged to meet for coffee at a quaint cafe in town. Their first date was filled with laughter and easy conversation. Layla was charming and attentive, asking EMT about his life, his family, and his dreams. EMT felt an immediate connection, believing he had finally found someone who truly understood him. As their relationship progressed, EMT's friends and family noticed how happy he seemed. Layla often joined him at family gatherings and social events, quickly becoming a familiar face in the community. She seemed to fit right in, and EMT's parents were pleased to see their son so content. However, there were subtle changes in EMT that only those closest to him noticed. Layla's charm had a way of overshadowing her more manipulative tendencies. She began to subtly influence EMT's decisions, steering him away from activities and people she deemed unnecessary. At first, it was small things, like suggesting they spend more time alone together or questioning the motives of his friends. EMT, eager to please Layla and maintain the harmony of their relationship, often acquiesced to her demands. Layla was meticulous in her approach. She never directly forbade EMT from seeing his friends or family, but she planted seeds of doubt in his mind. She would mention how certain friends didn't seem to appreciate him or how his family was overly critical. EMT, who had always been sensitive to others' opinions, began to internalize these suggestions, gradually distancing himself from his loved ones. Despite these changes, EMT remained convinced that Layla was the best thing that had ever happened to him. He admired her confidence and believed that she had his best interests at heart. Layla, on the other hand, was pleased with how easily she had managed to isolate EMT. She felt a sense of power, knowing that she was the center of his world, controlling his actions and decisions. Their relationship continued to deepen, with EMT becoming more dependent on Layla for emotional support and validation. Layla, aware of her influence, began to tighten her grip, ensuring that EMT had little to no contact with anyone outside their relationship. To the outside world, they appeared to be a perfect couple, but behind closed doors, the dynamics were far more sinister. EMT's once vibrant social life dwindled to nothing, leaving him isolated and completely under Laya's control. As the months passed, Laya's control over EMT grew stronger. She employed subtle yet effective methods to isolate him from his family and friends, ensuring that he remained entirely dependent on her. It started with casual suggestions and offhand comments, but gradually her tactics became more manipulative and deliberate. One evening, as EMT prepared to meet his sister Rachel for dinner, Laya expressed concern about his family's influence on him. She mentioned how they always seemed to criticize their relationship and hinted that perhaps they didn't truly want him to be happy. EMT, already sensitive to his family's opinions, began to doubt their intentions. He canceled the dinner, opting instead to stay home with Laya. Laya also made it a point to be present whenever EMT received phone calls from friends or family. She would sit close by, making him uncomfortable and self-conscious about the conversation. Over time, EMT's calls to his loved ones became less frequent as he grew tired of the tension it caused. His friends noticed his absence from social gatherings and reached out, but Laya always found a way to intercept their messages or make excuses for why EMT couldn't attend. Laya's control extended to EMT's daily routines and activities. She insisted on accompanying him everywhere, from grocery shopping to his volunteer work at the local community center. EMT, eager to keep the peace, didn't resist. He began to feel suffocated, but he couldn't pinpoint the source of his discomfort. Laya's constant presence and influence made it difficult for him to think clearly or make decisions independently. One particularly telling incident occurred when EMT's childhood friend Leo invited him on a weekend fishing trip. EMT, excited about the prospect of reconnecting with Leo, shared the news with Laya. Her reaction was swift and intense. She questioned Leo's motives, suggesting that he was trying to pull EMT away from their relationship. Laya accused EMT of being inconsiderate, claiming that he was abandoning her for a frivolous outing. EMT, caught off guard by her emotional outburst, reluctantly declined Leo's invitation. Laya's manipulation didn't stop there. She began to control EMT's finances, convincing him to merge their bank accounts for convenience. This move further isolated EMT as he now had limited access to his own money. Laya monitored his spending closely, questioning every purchase and often overriding his decisions. EMT felt increasingly powerless, unable to assert himself without facing Laya's wrath. Despite these red flags, EMT continued to believe that Laya had his best interests at heart. He rationalized her behavior as a sign of her deep love and commitment to their relationship. However, the isolation took a toll on his mental and emotional well-being. He became withdrawn and anxious, struggling to reconcile his love for Laya with the growing sense of entrapment. Laya, sensing EMT's inner turmoil, doubled down on her efforts to isolate him. She discouraged him from seeking help or confiding in others, framing it as a betrayal of their trust. EMT, already emotionally fragile, complied. He cut off contact with the few remaining friends and family members he had left, fully entrusting his life to Laya's control. As the months turned into a year, EMT's world became smaller and more confined. His once vibrant and fulfilling life was reduced to the narrow confines of his relationship with Laya. The community, unaware of the turmoil behind closed doors, continued to see them as a happy couple. Despite Laya's control, there were moments when he longed for the comfort and support of his family and friends. These flickers of desire for connection were met with resistance from Laya, who sensed that she was losing her grip on him. One afternoon, EMT found himself standing outside the hardware store, reminiscing about the days when he would work alongside his father. He missed the camaraderie of the small community and the simple joys of his previous life. On an impulse, he decided to visit his parents, hoping for a moment of normalcy and perhaps a chance to explain his absence. When EMT arrived at his parents' house, they were overjoyed to see him. His mother, Eleanor, embraced him tightly, her eyes filled with concern. His father, Thomas, greeted him with a firm handshake, his expression a mix of relief and worry. EMT felt a surge of emotion as he Saturday down with his parents, who eagerly caught him up on family news and events. For a brief moment, EMT felt like himself again, surrounded by the warmth and familiarity of his family. However, as the visit progressed, he could sense Laya's disapproval hanging over him like a dark cloud. She had called him multiple times during the visit, each call more insistent than the last. EMT's parents noticed his unease and gently probed, asking if everything was all right. EMT hesitated, but eventually confided in his parents about the strain he was feeling. He didn't go into detail about Laya's manipulative behavior, but he mentioned feeling overwhelmed and isolated. Eleanor and Thomas listened attentively, offering their support and urging EMT to reach out more often. They assured him that he was always welcome and that they would help him in any way they could. Leaving his parents' house that day, EMT felt a glimmer of hope. He resolved to reconnect with his family and friends, believing that their support would help him regain a sense of normalcy. However, when he returned home, Laya was waiting for him, her eyes cold and calculating. Laya's anger was palpable. She accused EMT of betraying her trust and undermining their relationship. She framed his visit to his parents as a deliberate attempt to distance himself from her. EMT, caught off guard by her intensity, tried to explain that he simply missed his family and needed their support. But Laya wouldn't hear of it. She berated him, using emotional manipulation to make him feel guilty and ashamed. The following days were a nightmare for EMT. Laya's controlling behavior escalated, and she became more possessive and paranoid. She monitored his every move, checking his phone and questioning his whereabouts. EMT felt trapped, unable to breathe under the suffocating weight of her control. Despite Laya's efforts, EMT managed to reach out to his sister Rachel through discreet messages. Rachel, sensing her brother's distress, agreed to meet him in secret. They met at a secluded park where EMT poured out his heart, revealing the extent of Laya's manipulation and control. Rachel was horrified and immediately offered her support, vowing to help EMT break free from Laya's grasp. EMT's attempts to reconnect with his loved ones were fraught with challenges. Laya's influence was pervasive, and she used every tool at her disposal to maintain her control over him. However, the seeds of doubt had been planted in EMT's mind. He began to see through Laya's facade, recognizing her manipulative tactics for what they were. The more he tried to reconnect with his family and friends, the more determined he became to regain his independence and escape from Laya's clutches. The tension between EMT and Laya reached a boiling point. One fateful evening, EMT had been secretly meeting with his sister Rachel, seeking her support and advice on how to extricate himself from Laya's control. Rachel, deeply concerned for her. "Certainly, here is your text with commas and full stops added for clarity." Brother's well-being urged him to leave Lila and return to his family. Emboldened by his sister's encouragement, he decided it was time to confront Lila and end their toxic relationship. EMT chose a quiet Sunday afternoon to break the news to Lila. He hoped that the calmness of the day would help keep the situation from escalating. As they sat in their living room, EMT took a deep breath and told Lila that he needed some space and time apart. He explained that he felt suffocated and isolated, and that he needed to reconnect with his family and friends to find himself again. Lila's reaction was immediate and explosive. She accused EMT of being ungrateful and selfish, of abandoning the relationship they had built together. Her voice rose in anger, and she began to hurl insults and accusations, attempting to undermine EMT's resolve. She claimed that his family and friends didn't truly care about him, that they only wanted to control him and pull him away from her. EMT tried to remain calm, but Lila's relentless tirade wore him down. He felt a mix of anger, guilt, and sadness as he listened to her venomous words. Despite her emotional manipulation, EMT knew that he couldn't continue living under her control. He stood his ground, repeating his need for space and asserting that he was making the decision for his own well-being. Lila, realizing that her usual tactics were not working, shifted her approach. She broke down in tears, pleading with EMT to reconsider. She promised to change, to give him more freedom, and to be more understanding. EMT, seeing through her manipulative behavior, remained firm in his decision. He told her that he needed to leave and that it was the best thing for both of them. The atmosphere in the room grew tense and charged with emotion. Lila's tears quickly turned to anger again, and she lashed out, accusing EMT of cheating and betrayal. EMT, exhausted and emotionally drained, decided to leave the house for a while to clear his head. He grabbed his jacket and walked out the door, leaving Lila seething with rage. When EMT finally returned home, he found Lila waiting for him, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She approached him with a calm demeanor, apologizing for her outburst and begging for another chance. EMT, though sympathetic to her pain, stood his ground and reiterated his need for space. That night, as EMT tried to sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Lila's behavior had become increasingly erratic, and he feared that her desperation might drive her to do something drastic. His instincts were correct. In the early hours of the morning, EMT was awakened by a noise in the living room. He got up to investigate and found Lila sitting on the couch, clutching a large kitchen knife. Her eyes were wild with desperation and anger. EMT's heart raced as he tried to talk her down, but Lila's mind was made up. She accused EMT of ruining her life, of turning everyone against her. In a fit of rage, she lunged at him with the knife. EMT managed to dodge her initial attack, but Lila was relentless. A struggle ensued, with EMT trying to disarm Lila while avoiding her frantic swings. In the chaos, Lila's grip on the knife slipped, and EMT seized the opportunity to wrest it from her hand. In the aftermath of the struggle, both were left breathless and shaken. EMT, now holding the knife, dropped it and stepped back, giving Lila space to calm down. Realizing the gravity of the situation, EMT knew he had to leave. He quickly packed a bag and, without looking back, walked out of the house, leaving Lila behind. He drove to his parents' home, where he was welcomed with open arms. As he told them everything that had just happened, EMT knew that the road to recovery would be long and difficult, but he was ready to take the first step. Lila, consumed by a mix of rage and despair, couldn't accept the loss of control over EMT. Her mind raced with thoughts of revenge and retribution. She felt humiliated and abandoned, and her desperation turned into a dangerous resolve. In the days following EMT's departure, Lila's behavior became increasingly insane. She spent hours pacing the house, plotting ways to regain control over EMT. Her anger festered, and she began to see his decision to leave as an unforgivable betrayal. Lila convinced herself that EMT's family and friends were to blame for his decision, and she resolved to make him pay for abandoning her. One evening, as EMT was visiting his parents, Lila devised a plan. She knew that EMT often took a walk through a secluded part of town in the evenings to clear his head. She decided to confront him there, away from prying eyes, armed with the same kitchen knife from their previous altercation. Lila set out to intercept EMT. As EMT approached a secluded park, he was startled to see Lila standing there, her eyes fixed on him. He stopped in his tracks, a mix of fear and sadness washing over him. Lila's appearance was disheveled, and her eyes burned with a dangerous intensity. EMT knew that this confrontation could not end well. Lila's voice was cold and menacing as she accused EMT of ruining her life. She blamed him for her misery and demanded that he return to her. EMT tried to reason with her, explaining that their relationship was toxic and that he needed to move on for his own well-being. But Lila was beyond reason. In a sudden, violent outburst, Lila lunged at EMT with the knife. EMT tried to defend himself, but Lila's rage gave her frightening strength. A struggle ensued, with EMT desperately trying to disarm her. In the chaos, Lila managed to stab EMT, the blade piercing his side. EMT cried out in pain, but Lila showed no signs of stopping. As EMT fell to the ground, clutching his wound, Lila stood over him, her face contorted with fury and madness. EMT, weakened and bleeding, pleaded with her to stop, but his words fell on deaf ears. Lila, consumed by her desire for control and revenge, delivered a final, fatal blow. The once peaceful park was now a crime scene, with EMT lying lifeless on the ground. Lila, covered in his blood, stood there for a moment, her mind slowly registering the reality of what she had done. Realizing that she couldn't stay there, Lila fled the scene, leaving EMT's body behind. She drove aimlessly through the night, her mind racing with thoughts of escape. She knew that it was only a matter of time before the police would come looking for her. The next morning, EMT's body was discovered by a passerby who immediately called the police. The murder of EMT Dalton sent shockwaves through the community, a town unaccustomed to such violence. The local police, led by Detective Samuel Carter, launched a thorough investigation to uncover the truth behind EMT's tragic death. As the news spread, the tight-knit community rallied around EMT's family, offering support and demanding justice. Detective Carter, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving complex cases, began his work by examining the crime scene. The secluded park where EMT's body was found offered little in the way of witnesses, but the brutality of the attack indicated a crime of passion. The wounds on EMT's body suggested a frenzied assault, pointing to someone who knew him well. The investigation quickly focused on Lila Renshaw, EMT's estranged girlfriend. Neighbors and acquaintances described their tumultuous relationship, with several recounting instances of Lila's controlling behavior. EMT's family provided crucial insights into the couple's recent conflicts and EMT's attempts to distance himself from Lila. These testimonies painted a picture of a relationship marked by manipulation, culminating in a fatal confrontation. Detective Carter and his team conducted a thorough search of Lila's home, uncovering several pieces of incriminating evidence. They found EMT's blood on Lila's clothing and the kitchen knife used in the attack hidden in a drawer. Lila's phone records showed multiple calls to EMT on the night of the murder, further implicating her in the crime. As the evidence mounted, the police issued an arrest warrant for Lila. She was located in a rundown motel on the outskirts of town, attempting to evade capture. When the police arrived, Lila offered little resistance, her demeanor one of resignation. The trial was a highly publicized event, drawing attention from the local community. EMT's family attended every session, their presence a poignant reminder of the loss they had suffered. The prosecution presented a compelling case detailing Lila's manipulative behavior and the violent nature of the crime. Witnesses testified about Lila's possessiveness and her efforts to isolate EMT from his loved ones. Lila's defense team attempted to portray her as a victim of circumstance, arguing that she had acted in a moment of emotional turmoil. However, the overwhelming evidence coupled with Lila's lack of remorse left little room for doubt. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before returning a guilty verdict. Lila was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her conviction brought a sense of closure to EMT's family, though the pain of their loss would never fully heal. The community mourned the senseless death of one of its own, grappling with the realization that such darkness could exist in their midst.